The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, the Llama Awareness Foundation, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Altiplano from Renegade Games. They'll also take a look back at the Dukes review of Yokohama in their Dukes Double Take. And finally, they'll talk about games you can DIY, even if they're also games you can buy. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
Also Alex.
Oh, hi, Alex.
Just throwing you off, keeping you on your toes.
Great. Good job. Way to go. Episode 176, jumping right back in it, which we're calling Alpaca Ex Machina.
Alpaca.
All right.
Fun fact, and this is worth knowing, my BGG username is Alpec73. Not in reference to an alpaca, but in reference to my elementary school nickname, Alpec. And my favorite number ever. Back to you, Sean.
Terrific, Alex. Terrific. No, so this is courtesy Jake Bach, our good buddy over at Draft Mechanic. He suggested this over on our BGG Guild, and there's a cool little backstory here. Of course, we name all of our episodes with the help of our guild, and it's usually trying to tie together different elements of the show. So the Ex Machina, the Machina, is kind of referring to the industrialization of Japan. And of course, we got Alpaca. Is it Alpaca or Alpaca? Alpaca.
I'm going to say alpaca this whole episode.
Okay, Alpaca.
But I may accidentally say llama like 5 times during the review.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so Alpaca is referring, of course, to Altiplano, and the reference, Alpaca Ex Machina, the Deus Ex Machina, it's because we had someone show up out of the blue at a con, Jake Bach himself, to make sure you got your plays in, Alex.
And he did.
He
and I appreciate
handcuffed you to the table. He kept prodding you with a stick. Take your turn.
And you paid him off in beer, I'm assuming.
To be delivered at some future date. No, he sent me pictures on Facebook. He's like, "Hey, don't worry, I got you covered this episode."
Oh man. Oh, now everyone knows. I'm so embarrassed.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well. Got done with Geek Way to the West, which I'll be talking more about in a bit, and saw a bunch of familiar faces, and that wore me out. I was running a booth pretty much single-handed, not totally, but almost. And so a little wipe from that, but I've recovered just in time to get ready to go to UK Gaming Expo this next week. So I'm a traveling man. I'm a traveling man these days, Sean. How about yourself?
Well, I'll be traveling myself just about 45 minutes north of Santa Fe. So about the same. Same. Yeah.
Arrested Development coming out next week.
It is. I'm very excited. I just rewatched the new recut of season 4, which improved it slightly. But
I agree. Yeah, that's my assessment too.
Yeah. So anyway, this is not a podcast about Arrested Development. Although it could be. I've seen it enough, but it's not. So how about we talk about some board games, Alex?
Sure. You go first.
Okay. Wait, you want me to go first, even though you have all this Geek Way goodness to talk about?
I'll get there. I'm a patient dude.
Well, I don't know that that's true.
Always.
That's actually the exact opposite of how you are when you're learning a game.
They call me old patient Duke Alex.
No one has ever called you that in any way, shape, or form.
Reckon he's the most patient Duke in the West.
So I'm excited to talk about both of these games tonight. I'm going to talk about Seventh Continent, and then I'm going to talk about Feudum. Just a little preview. I want everyone to have a little idea to mentally prepare where we're going.
Give me the Feudum trailer. I need the Feudum trailer.
In a world where the colors are weird and there's weird snake monsters and troll monsters, you do things and there's a big rondelle and it's a really heavy game but doesn't look like it. And Alex should totally not review this game.
Yep.
That's Feudum. So, wait, is that what we're talking about first? Or Seventh Continent? Let's stick with Feudum. So, Feudum is designed by Mark K. Swanson. It's published by Crowd Games, And this was recently fulfilled from Kickstarter. I did not back this, even though I really wanted to. And I'm forgetting, something else came out around the same time. Might have been Lisboa. I feel like it was Lisboa that was on Kickstarter at the same time. And this was a pretty hefty price tag. This is a pretty heavy game. I think BGG, oh yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's a 4.57 weight out of 5 as far as the weight, the complexity of this game. So a couple weeks ago, I'm like, hey, Alex, maybe we should review Feudum. And you're like, I don't know anything about it. I said, well, let me look into it and see how heavy it really is. No, we're not. You are not reviewing this. You are simply not. It is awesome. And what I was trying to rack my brain, like, what does this kind of game remind me of? It reminds me a little bit of some Vital Lacerda games. I think that as a heavy game goes, I think this is something you would like because there's a lot of, it all kind of makes sense, but it's kind of crazy. So in Feudum, you are trying to gain influence in this little nation. You're trying to please the king, and you're building up these different towns. They start off as outposts, and you can upgrade them to farms, and then cities, and then eventually these feudums, which have a specialty in one of the 6 guilds. And so there's a little bit of not area control, I just say area presence, because at the end of certain eras or ages, you're going to be scoring for how many different regions you are located in, or I guess that you're in control of a particular town. And so you kind of want to spread out, but it's not really like area or majority control or anything like that. And so you have these your pawns, but they're actually dice, but you're not rolling. There's cubes. And you're able to move them around the board and add influence to the different little towns. And if you're the first person to do that, you're going to be the ruler of that town, which can give you certain things. If you're the second person there, you're going to be a serf, I think. I think that's the terminology. And there's some interesting ways, little power plays within these little towns that you can do. But ultimately, as you're adding your pawns to the board, because you start with 1, each one represents one of the 6 different guilds. You're then going to get some bonuses based on what type of towns you are the ruler of. And then also, if you rule feudums, you can get other certain bonuses, because basically these 6 guilds, you're trying to jockey for control of these guilds because they're worth points at the end of the eras, but they also give you some extra abilities that you can use. If you're the guild master, you're able to do something, whereas if you're the journeyman, you're able to do a little something different. But what's cool is these 6 guilds, there's 3 on each side of the board, and they are this big rondel, essentially. And so you'll take resources from one of the guilds, and you'll push it if you're the guild master of that guild, or if you're the next guild over, the journeyman, you can pull them over, and you're basically just kind of turning one resource into another type of resource. And these things are just kind of circulating around the board. The main mechanic of the game is choosing from a hand of, I think, 10 cards. Everyone has the same 10 cards. And you're choosing 4, sometimes 5 cards that you're then going to play out as actions one at a time. Everyone goes around. So that's a big choice right there. Which 4 or 5 cards am I choosing? And am I going to execute them in the right order? And maybe you're like, oh, I chose this card. Man, I really wish I had chosen this card instead. So there's a lot going on there. You have the 10 different action cards. There are certain bonus actions you can take depending on the cards. Then there's basically 18 different guild actions, 3 for each guild that you're able to take. It was pretty meaty. And I think that this is a game that you'd be like, oh, I appreciate this. I could see why this is good. And I think it'd be something that you might tolerate, like you tolerate certain Lacerda games. But yeah, we're not going to have you review this.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I will say, at work, Josh over at Monochromatic Wolf has been trying to get me to play Indonesia.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Not Feudum, Indonesia.
No. Don't do that. Don't do that.
No?
No.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. You should avoid splatter games, Alex. Just avoid them. Indonesia's fantastic. You will not like Indonesia.
Okay.
No way, shape, or form. But yeah, Feudum's really good. It's the art on it. It's really interesting. The art's done by Justin Schultz, and it's this kind of. It almost reminds me of like Adventure Time. I don't know. Have you seen the the box art for it?
No, I have not.
It has this like Adventure Time aesthetic and like the weird fantasy. It's really interesting, and you wouldn't think it's as heavy a game by looking at it necessarily, but it's pretty heavy. So we're going to try and get this on the table again pretty soon while the rules are still pretty fresh. But yeah, it was really good.
Nice. Glad to hear it.
That is a Feudum.
Well, in honor of Sean going out of order, I'm going to go out of order. Last night at Jamie Stegmeier's game night, I got a chance to play Seikatsu. Sean, have you gotten a chance to play Seikatsu yet?
I have. Yeah.
Okay. It's really interesting to me in that it is a 3-player. I don't know if it's only. You could play it with 2, I think.
Yeah, and I think maybe 4, but 3 is really the ideal play count.
Yeah, and the count that it appears to have been designed for. How it works is you are competing to have the best view of this garden that you're going to build out. And you're going to try and group colors of flowers and kinds of birds together. You'll get immediate points based on the kinds of birds that are next to each other when you place a tile. And you will get endgame points based on how many sets of flowers you have in the rows that you can view. Everyone can view every piece on the board, but different people have different views on them. So if I am looking, say, from my perspective, down the middle, that's going to be one set of things, but my middle is going to contain parts of the person next to me's ends and sides, and basically every piece interacts with the others in different ways. Mechanics are dirt simple. You have 2 pieces, you pick one, you place, you score points, next person. But I like this kind of game. It's simple, it's elegant. It was one that I played with Abby. It was her first time attending Jamie Stegmeier game night, and it was a hit. It played pretty well, and by the way, she stomped us. She absolutely creamed us in this game. I will say I had one beef with this on a component issue, Sean. A big key to this game is the different kinds of flowers that surround the birds. You want to. It's important to have as many of those in a row as you possibly can. 2 of the colors are very, very, very close together of these flowers, and you can tell the difference if you see them. But they're both pretty like similar pinkish, and it's harder to distinguish than it should be. Harder to distinguish than it should be. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but other than that, it's a beautiful production, elegant game, ton of fun, and one of those rare ones that plays best at 3. So that is Seikatsu.
Cool. Yeah, I wasn't completely enamored with it. I think it's a fine design. In fact, what's the designer's name again? I think I had talked about like two or three of his games in the same episode.
Oh yeah,
I was kind of met on all of them.
Well, the first name that popped into my head was Koji Kondo, but I think that's just because I've been listening to a lot of video game music lately. He's the composer for Mario and all of those other fun things. No, why is that the first thing that popped into your head? Because it's a Japanese name on the game, and then anyway, it's fine. It's co-designed by Matt Loomis and Isaac Shalev. Might be Shalev. I don't know how to pronounce it. Shalev.
Yeah. I think.
Okay.
I said it so authoritatively. I'm like, oh, of course it's this.
Great. Well, you were certainly closer than Koji Kondo, so...
That's true. All right, well, very cool. So let's talk about the Seventh Continent, Alex. This was another Kickstarter fulfillment. This one I did back. This was the second printing of it. And I got to say, for some reason, I had it in my mind that this was more of a campaign game because there is a cool mechanic in here where you're able to save your progress, put it away, and then pull it back out. But really, it's just because a single scenario could possibly take multiple sessions. But it's not really a campaign game. So what I've done at the office is my old office. So as soon as I took over, I took the big office. I moved all my stuff, took the big office. And right now I have an empty office until I decide to hire someone new. And so I have the Seventh Continent set up on my old office, or in my old office, which is pretty interesting. So the plan here is to get some plays of it during lunches or maybe after work or something. There's been few opportunities because it's been really busy since it's pretty much been just me at the office doing my lawyerly stuff.
So lonely.
Well, no, I have staff. I'm just the only attorney right now.
Right. Yeah.
So
and yeah, you're a lonely attorney. I get it.
Okay, thanks. Anyway, so the Seventh Continent is kind of an adventure card game. Sound interesting so far? Adventure card game?
Yes, and familiar.
Yes. So basically, this is set in the early 20th century. We've discovered a new continent that's somewhere like above Antarctica. And so it's got this, this old-timey pulp feel to it. And people want to go search this place because there's all sorts of expeditions and treasures and riches to be found and things like that. So what you'll do is you'll set it up with a curse. There are these different curses in the base game, and then the expansions will come out with additional curses, which will kind of determine exactly what your win conditions will be and the map that you're using. Because there's a ton of these square cards, and they're broken down into skill cards. They're broken down into these numbered cards that are going to form the map and kind of create these encounters. And then there's also these cards with Roman numerals, which are these like fog cards that have these other events that might occur from time to time. So you lay down a card that the curse says, and you pick your adventurers. Playing solo, I'm playing 2 adventurers, and they have some special abilities. There's people like Dr. Frankenstein, there's H.P. Lovecraft, and then some others. And you put your little figures, or if you don't have the Kickstarter exclusives, there's the, doesn't everyone have the Kickstarter exclusives because it's only available via Kickstarter? I don't know. That's an interesting question. But there's little cardboard standees as well. Anyway, you put them on this card, and then the card will tell you that there are basically links to other areas, because this is your map, right? So it's this little terrain feature. And so it might say, put a card here to the left, put a card here to the top. And when you move there, you flip it over, you resolve some event, and then you replace that with a particular card number so it completes this map. And on each of these cards, there are some possible different actions that you can take that are going to let you explore the island, maybe get some food, maybe get some equipment, maybe fight some weird animals. And the cool mechanic here is that each of these actions that you're taking is going to have some requirement in terms of the number of skill cards you have to spend and how many successes you need. So you have this deck of skills, and this is your life force as well as determining how actions are resolved. So if you run through these cards, you've pretty much lost, because then at that point you just take the discard pile, shuffle it up, and if you ever reveal one of the curse cards, the game's over. So you don't really want to go through the pile. It's basically sudden death at that point. So let's say I'm trying to climb this precipice, which is one of the first things that you'll do. You climb this precipice, and it has a skill check of 2, and it requires 2 successes. So that means I'm going to flip over 2 cards from the skill deck. If I have 2 stars on them, I've succeeded. But keep in mind, I'm spending my life force to do this essentially. And I can do other things where I could choose to draw extra skill cards and have a higher chance of success. But of course, I'm burning through the deck a lot quicker. And maybe I've acquired equipment like a rope, which on a climbing check is going to either have me draw less cards or give me automatic successes. Some cards have half stars, and you'll combine them with other cards with the opposite half to get extra successes. It was really cool. And this game does a lot of really interesting things. And I want to be careful not to spoil anything, but there are some things that are revealed in the rulebook. Like, for example, there might be a number written on a card, like on the terrain, which tells you to basically reference another number. And it's kind of hidden, right? So I didn't realize I needed to find this particular hidden number until way too late. So I've played this once, I lost. I'm going to be able to play it again, and I'm going to be able to kind of to skip ahead of things. I think I really only hit like a third of this particular scenario before I died. So you get better. Yeah. You get better at certain things. Managing that deck of your skill cards. The other thing too is when you do a check, you're able to take one of those skill cards into hand because they're multi-use cards, right? It's either number of successes as you flip them, or they give you some special abilities. Some of them are specific to the character that you have. Some of them are just general. This was really good. It was a little frustrating towards the end when I'm like, I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do. And it turned out there was a hidden number on one of these cards that I just completely missed. But that's also kind of cool. Like, it's not, I don't know how to explain it. Everything like one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing, and it's kind of spelled out for you in the mechanics of the card. Like you have the iconography, it's like, oh, well, you clearly do this. But the idea that there's something hidden in the art of the terrain, I think was really cool. Like I really like that. And it's going to make me be a lot more careful in the future. Every time I flip over a new card, I am going to examine the crap out of that card to see what's on it. I am really excited to play more of this. I think it's really awesome. I think if you have access to it anywhere there, Alex, I think you're really going to like this. Like really going to like this.
Okay. I've seen it on the table at Jamie's, so I know that it's floating around the group somewhere. It might be something worth trying at some point. Yeah, sounds cool.
Yeah, so that is Seventh Continent from Serious Pulp.
Well, hey, Sean, remember when you were going to come out to Geekway?
Yeah.
And then you didn't?
Well, yeah.
You messed up.
I trust me, I know.
You messed up.
Yes, thank you.
Geekway's really cool. Geekway's really, really cool. Not surprised because I saw this described online somewhere. Is St. Louis the LA of board gaming?
I don't know what that means exactly.
It's sort of the industry center, the place where it all happens, the place where stars rise and fall. I don't know. It might be. It might not be, but Geekway's really cool. So this is held out at the St. Charles Convention Center, and to me, it had the feel very much of a Dice Tower Con in a very good way. Dice Tower Con remains my favorite convention because it's focused a lot on play. As an attendee, you will get to play a ton of stuff. Now, within that, each of these conventions has something they kind of specialize in. BGG Con, for instance, you have some of the new hotness coming over from Essen based on the timing, but also you have the amazing number of games you get on the way in the door. Dice Tower Con does a great job with its hot games area, that the number of games set up on the table that are, oh man, I really need to play this, is fantastic, and usually there's not a ton of a wait for it. So that area there is beautiful. The big key for Geekway, or the one big thing that sets it apart for me, is the play and win. They go all out on play and wins. They have an incredibly robust play and win section with multiple copies of games, lots of winners. I think it was something like 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 convention attendees could potentially win play and wins. So if you were playing well enough, sweet. You can only win one. You couldn't win duplicates, so throwing your name in a bunch of hats didn't make sense. It incentivized you to play games you were actually interested in playing. Really cool. I met up with a ton of awesome folks there, including the namer of this very episode, Jake Bach, and his lovely wife, Danielle, from the Draft Mechanic podcast. Had a fantastic time playing with them. My game of the con, Sean, I played a lot of games during that con, including Altiplano, which I'll talk about later, including Baseball Highlights 2045, first mention of the episode, with Berkey, who I beat soundly in 2 different series and was super stoked about doing so. I played Pulsar 2849, in fact, taught that to Jake and Danielle. But my favorite game of this con was a game called The Mind, designed by Wolfgang Warsch. Introduced to it by Jess Davis. She's at boardgame_girl1 on Twitter. She's going to, I believe, 26 or 23 conventions this year.
Holy cow.
Which is insane. I'm in the industry, and I'm not going to anywhere near that many.
I was going to say.
So she is on the road all the time, living that board gamer life. She has been a big-time evangelist for this game. So for folks who don't know what The Mind is, I'm gonna talk extensively about it. This is a game where you are trying to very simply play cards from lowest to highest, 1 to 100. Game plays 2 to 4 players. The trick with it is, it's not like, say, Hanabi, where the cards are facing away from you. It's almost reverse Hanabi, where you know exactly what's in your hand, but not what's in everyone else's.
Wait.
Yeah, let's hear it.
That's the norm.
It is the norm.
That is the...
But in Hanabi, wait a minute. Don't get on my case.
Go ahead.
Don't get on my case here. This makes sense.
So it's a really novel concept here. You get to see what's in your hand, and no one else does.
What I'm trying to get at is it has the communication restrictions of Hanabi. In other words, you can't say what's in your hand exactly. But it's the opposite. You know what's in your own hand, but not what's in other people's. So the mechanic of this, hey.
Go ahead. Sorry. I'm done.
Oh, you're killing me.
I'm turning my mic down. My mic's off.
Oh, boy. In Reverse Hanabi, a.k.a. The Mind. I was trying to get Sean to laugh again, which he might be, but he might be muted. Anyway, he's nodding his head on the webcam. This is great podcasting right here. All you have to do is through connection, through looking at someone, through little gestures and inclinations. That's your way of communicating and trying to play these cards in order. Starts off fairly simple. You start off with one card each that you have to play in order. It gets more and more complicated. You get more cards in hand each round. At 2 players, you're trying to get through 12 rounds. At 3 players, trying to get through 10 rounds. At 4 players, 8 rounds of this. You have an option of something called a shuriken, where if everyone raises their hand at the same time, you drop the lowest valued card out of your hand. I've pretty much described all of the rules. If you play cards out of order, you lose a life. That's the other one. Man, oh man, I immediately and irrevocably fell in love with The Mind. Just completely fell in love with this game. And I will get that there are plenty of listeners, especially I would think some of the more Sean-inclined listeners, even though Sean likes this game.
Yeah.
I think there's enough of the Sean-inclined listeners who will not dig this. For instance, in our group, Matthew Ward, Strawman Matthew, absolutely not his kind of game. And I've played with groups since where, oh boy, this thing can be wrecked in a hurry. But when it works, man, is it so cool. There's just this tension, this emotion, this, how did we do this? This, we screwed up. It's a game that takes you through a lot of things without a ton of mechanics, without a ton of components, without a ton of anything. And it encourages something which I love in games. And I haven't described it as something I love in games. And it was sort of this game that made me realize it's something that I think is fundamental to games I enjoy. It's this sense of connection. It's a mechanic of connection in this game that I think is lacking in some games that I don't enjoy, if that makes sense. This is a game that's entirely connection. It's entirely looking into someone's eyes and do you have something higher than a 58 or something lower? Should you go first? Should I go first? And trying to figure that out without saying anything is a beautiful, amazing dilemma to have. I think it's absolutely worthy of a Spiel nomination. And I also know there are so many people, so many gamers who are going to just poo-poo it and not enjoy it, and it's not going to be for them. And that's fine. I love this game. Love it to a point that I bought a copy of the game and then did a print and play version to modify it so it could become The Mind. And I've never done that with any game ever before. Ever. It inspired the discussion topic this week. I've been so anti-print and play personally just because I think I'm lazy. I think it's part of it. That's part of it. Anyway.
No comment. I'm back, by the way.
Hey, thanks, Sean. I appreciate your discretion. Anyway, what do you think of Reverse Hanabi, Sean?
I think Reverse Hanabi is great. Yeah, I think it's a game that someone's either going to look at this and say, this isn't a game. Like, there's nothing, like, what are you even doing? There's nothing here. And other people like you, and I think me too, love it. I think it's fantastic. There, like you said, that tension is just incredible because you're like, how am I communicating with my hesitation or my eagerness to maybe or maybe not play the card right now that I'm somewhere in the 20s? And are they interpreting that I'm actually in the 10s? Yeah, it's really good. I think it's really good. But I think that, yeah, you're either going to love this game or you're going to hate it. And I will talk about it more during the discussion topic as well.
Yeah, I played this game until 2:30 in the morning one of the nights. And keep in mind, I had a booth to run the next day. So that was not the smartest of decisions I've ever made. But man, oh man, is that thing fun. And one of the more satisfying gaming moments I've had in recent memory was playing this with Abby, just 2-player. And on our third play of this, we were on level 12. 12 cards each, 1 life, no shurikens. And man, oh man, were there some close calls, including the very last card. There was a 90 on the table. I had a 94. She had a 95.
Ooh, that's bad luck.
Bad luck, but we pulled it off.
Nice.
I took the leap. We had enough of a connection. I had a sense that she seemed to be letting me go enough, and I'm going to trust her. And bam, we won, and I freaked out. It was so cool. It was so cool.
Well, I was just going to say, it was reminding me of like one of the early scenes in Ghostbusters where Venkman is testing them on their ESP,
yeah.
and he's holding the card up and they're trying to guess what shape it is, and that's a great movie. I love Ghostbusters.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but I have seen that movie.
I've watched it 3 times in the last week because Chewie likes it.
Aw. Oh, Chewie. So yeah, that's the Mind, and that's Geekway. I think it's for folks who are looking for a con to attend. My recommended ones for folks who want to just play and connect and engage with folks. Geekway is beautiful. Dice Tower Con's great. BGG Con's great. I would not recommend Gen Con, but that's just me. I think it's just for my money a little bit overwhelming, and I think you can get a pretty good con experience at these ones as well. Plenty of us publisher folks out and about too. So if that's what you're in for, there's at least some of that going on. Any case, I think Geekway is really awesome, and Sean, hopefully you can make it out next year.
Hopefully.
But you're a big important attorney with his name on a law firm. Ooh, look at you.
Yeah, it's true. I got the signs today. I showed you pictures of them.
You did. I was very impressed. Although it's something and Ramirez, which you're not used to having your name after the and. That must have been pretty weird.
That's true.
Anyway,
but that's okay.
That's what we played this week. Let's head on over to the news desk. This week in news, the Dukes recover from a case of very bad timing, because the day we dropped our last episode was the exact day that the Spiel and Kennerspiel nominees were announced. Now, normally, with news like that, we would like to get it in the most recent episode afterwards, which, when we were going weekly, no problem.
Hey, no problem.
But we're a little behind the curve. It's too important not to talk about, so we're going to talk about it here anyway. So, sorry if you've heard this stuff to death, but you know what? I think it's interesting, and maybe you haven't. And maybe we have our own unique spin that you haven't heard of on these games. Ooh. Let's talk about the Spiel nominees first. 3 of them, as always. Azul by Michael Kiesling, published here in the U.S. by Plan B Games. We have The Mind by Wolfgang Warsch, which is going to be brought over here to the U.S. under Pandasaurus Games. Pandasaurus Games bringing that one over. Remember that name, Wolfgang Warsch. You're going to be hearing it a lot more in the next category. And then Luxor, designed by Rudiger Dorn. And this one published, I believe, by Queen Games, if I'm not mistaken.
And real quick, Alex.
Yeah.
We should just say what this is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. I just assume.
Most of our listeners probably know, but there may be some that don't. The Spiel's been around for 30 years-ish, right? And so it's the basically German game of the year. It tends to skew more towards family weight games. And it's a highly coveted prize because it essentially means that your game's going to sell a ton more copies if you could stamp this on it. And some fantastic winners in the past, and really, really deserving games. So
yeah, well, and let me read a few of them, a few of recent ones for context. 2013's winner Hanabi, which has been reversed into the Mind and done pretty well. So Hanabi won in 2013. In 2014, Camel Up, controversially also called by some people Camel Cup, but they're wrong.
Which I played last night. Some new players.
Oh, did you? With the expansion?
No, just the base game. New players at game night. So
that's a good one to do it for. 2015, the award for the Spiel went to Colt Express. 2016, it was Codenames. And last year, King Domino. So all games that I think is still in the rotation in some form or fashion for gamers. And I think that tends to be the case for the Spiel. So this year we have 3, as mentioned, Azul, The Mind, and Luxor. And 2 of them I know quite a bit about, and one of them I am 100% clueless on. Sean, have you played all 3 of these?
I have not played Luxor. So Luxor, designed by Rudiger Dorn, who I think is a fantastic family weight designer. Previous winner, he won for Istanbul, and he won, what did he win? Oh, he won something else.
He was nominated for Karuba.
Okay, and I think he won something else. Could have
been a while ago.
He's had several nominations. So yeah, Luxor is something I don't know a whole lot about. From the description on BGG, on the hunt for priceless treasures, groups of adventurers explore the legendary temple at Luxor. Their ultimate goal is the tomb of the pharaoh, but many treasures can be collected as they search. As they explore, the challenge unfolds. The player who manages to quickly get their team of adventurers to the tomb while salvaging as many treasures as possible will be the winner. And so yeah, it looks like a pretty interesting family weight Euro, kind of the light medium, I'd probably say. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I'm certainly going to search it out now that it's been nominated for the Spiel. That's typically what we do.
Oh, yeah. And Queen Games has it. My guess is it will be... I think there was a Kickstarter campaign in some form or fashion for this, too, if I'm not mistaken. They do tend to do that.
That's what they tend to do. But yeah, it looks like you're basically choosing cards from like different discard piles to take different effects. You're completing movement, and then there's some sort of, depending where you end up, there's some action that you take as you're kind of going through the tomb. So yeah, looks interesting. And of course, Azul is one of my top games of last year. I think it's just a fantastic, light, mostly abstract game. And it's just so clever. It's really good. Basically, in Azul, you're drafting certain color tiles from these different groupings of them. You're trying to fill them on your board in such a way that there's a 1 spot, a 2 spot, 3, 4, and a 5. Is that right? There are 5? Yeah, there's 5. And basically, if you're filling in the 5 spot, you need more of them. Once you fill that in, you're able to move one of them over to your actual tableau, and you're trying to fit a certain pattern. And you get bonuses based on where it's placed and if you've completed in certain ways. I think it's a fantastic game. I don't know, Alex, that I'm going to spend $300 on the double size Azul.
Giant Azul.
Yes. That's a lot of money for Azul.
You're an attorney. You can make it happen.
Okay, sure.
Okay. By the way, while we were talking, I looked up some more about Luxor on Kickstarter, and there was a campaign that finished March. It finished late March, I believe. And that one raised about 35,000 euros. So I call it, I don't know what the conversion rate is, 45,000 US, somewhere in that ballpark. And then they launched another one as soon as the Spiel nomination was announced, and that thing's already raised $100,000. So that shows you the power of the Spiel. So I hope to play this one before the awards announced. I don't know if I'll get a chance to, but it's worth seeing how these all stack up head to head. I would say, judging off of this list and what's been done previously, I think there's a pretty good shot Azul wins this. I think that's sort of your early favorite, is my read on this. My favorite of these is going to be the Mind. The Mind is an instant 6 for me. So I like Azul. I like Azul a good amount. I actually own a copy, which is unusual. For the Mind, I love that game. I don't know if it's going to win. I think Azul is where my money would be. I don't know where your money is on this one, Sean.
So I think Azul is the king domino of this year, as far as like what role it plays on the 3 nominations, the list of nominations. I think Luxor is probably the what was the race game that was nominated? It was Deck Builder, and you're moving through the jungle.
Oh, yes. El Dorado. Road to El Dorado or something like that, yeah.
Race to El Dorado, Journey to El Dorado. And then what was the third game last year?
The third game, Magic Maze.
Magic Maze. The Mind is the Magic Maze.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
Right? I mean, they really match up in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's a good fit. That's a good fit.
So if last year's any indication, then I think Azul takes it.
Yeah, and I think it would be a worthy winner. So that is the Spiel this year. But of course, there is the Kennerspiel, the more connoisseur game, but even that has trended more light medium of late, which has been pretty interesting. Last year's winner was Exit Das Spiel over Terraforming Mars and Raiders of the North Sea. Before that, winner was Isle of Skye, and then prior to that, you have Broom Service and Istanbul and Legends of Andor. So that gives you a sense of some of the kinds of games that have won this. This year, Sean, I am 2/3 lost. So first up, you have Heaven and Ale, designed by Michael Kiesling and Andreas Schmidt. Hey, nice job, Michael Kiesling. You got 2 nominations, one in the Spiel, one in the Kennerspiel. Pretty awesome work. But wait, you just happen to be in the same year as Wolfgang Warsch decided to just... I had not heard of this guy before these nominations were announced. I think everyone knows his name now who follows this kind of thing, because he is nominated for Ganz schön clever, which, as best I can tell, translates to pretty clever.
Pretty pretty clever.
Pretty clever, Michael. Designed by Wolfgang Warsch and Die Quacksalber von Quedlinburg. The Quacks of Quedlinburg. Also designed by Wolfgang Warsch. What is going on, Sean? 3 of the 6 Spiel and Kennerspiels to the same designer. Are you kidding me?
I think Wolfgang was grown in a vat in some German cloning, like super game designer. They took elements, they took the genetic material from a bunch of different designers. They grew him last year, and this is the year that they finally put him to work.
Unreal. I mean, we were supremely impressed with Alexander Pfister's run, right?
Yeah.
Of back-to-back Kennerspiels. Was he nominated for 3 in a row? I think he might have even been. No, he wasn't. Never mind. But still, that's a pretty impressive run. To just dominate the category in that way, and the possibility that he could sweep both the Spiel and the Kennerspiel this year is ridiculous.
That would be pretty impressive.
I think it's very possible. I would say the Mind has an outside shot, but a shot. I don't know anything about the other two. Anything other than ganz schön clever is a roll and write. And I know even less about Die Quacksalber von Quedlinburg. No, very, very little. Sean, yeah, help us out here.
So I won't help you. Very little help. Ganz schön clever, I had ordered in an Amazon DE order that wound up missing about 9 months ago. And I just never kind of pursued it. There was some other stuff in there too. So it looked interesting. I heard that it was a fantastic roll and write, and it sounds like that was justified. The Quacks of Quedlinburg sounds really interesting. I also know very, very little about this. I was just kind of perusing it over on BGG, and it looks a little heavier. Apparently, you're a charlatan. I guess charlatan and quack is what Quacksalber, which I guess that's probably where the term quack comes from. That we have in English. Not the quack of a duck, but a medical person that's selling some tonic or what's it called? Snake oil. There you go. A snake oil salesman, right? So yeah, you're trying to make your own secret brew, drawing ingredients from a shared supply bag. And you've got this whole little brew you're concocting. It looks pretty interesting. I'm gonna make an effort to try and pick this up ahead of the announcement. Because the Kennerspiel tends to be games I enjoy a little bit more, or that at least the nominees do. And it looks interesting. Yeah. But of course, Heaven and Ale is fantastic. We reviewed that a couple episodes ago. I love it. I'm looking for an excuse to bring it out again soon, because it's just that excellent.
Okay, I have a matching analysis similar to what you did with the Spiel. Are you ready?
Yep.
So this year's Terraforming Mars is Heaven and Ale, I guess.
Okay.
Raiders of the North Sea is Die Quacksalber, and Exit das Spiel is ganz schön clever.
Yeah. Okay.
Because Exit das Spiel was sort of a, hey, here's all of these escape room games and those type of games, and a chance to honor those. And sure enough, it won. It represented sort of a trend of the time of a lot of those types of games. Now, this year, we are all of a sudden seeing the rise of the roll and write. It seems like everywhere you look, this is becoming an increasingly popular mechanic. We're going to be reviewing next episode after this one, Steamrollers from Stronghold Games. Obviously, Monochromatic Wolf has a roll and write. There are, they've seemed to really emerge of late, Sean. They're having a moment, and maybe this is the year that they make a statement in this way. That the Spiel Kennerspiel jury says, "Hey, check this out. This is a cool kind of game. Let's honor this." I don't know. It seems like Heaven and Ale is the safe bet, but that's also because that's the only game I've played out of these. I don't know enough to actually weigh in on this, Sean. Do you have a sense of where this thing might go?
No, not really. I think with Terraforming Mars last year, it wasn't kind of a classic Kennerspiel nominee. It wasn't quite Euro-y enough, I think. Even though it's a fantastic game, I love it. Heaven and Ale, I don't know, seems a safe bet, but again, that's, I just don't see a roll and write winning. But like you're alluding to from last year, I didn't see Exit winning either, the Exit series. And I just don't know enough about the quacks of Quedlinburg.
From looking at it briefly, the mechanics give it a sense that actually has a pretty good shot, specifically that game. But sure. I don't know, it's a toss-up. I don't know who the smart money's on this year. I'm going to be at UK Gaming Expo. Maybe someone will have a copy and we can give one or both of these a shot. So, very cool. That's the Spiel and Kenner Spiel. How about a Kickstarter? And hey, we just mentioned roll and writes. How about a roll and write that's doing really well on Kickstarter? On Tour. Sean, what is this game?
So this looks pretty interesting, and for full disclosure, I've already backed it. I backed it when it first came out because I'm a roll and write fan. And I had played a couple, but really it was our good buddy Suzanne who had kind of turned me on to several. And so this is a 20-minute route building roll and write game. It's got some nice large components, like you have these nice foldable player boards that have dry erase markers that you'll write on. So rather than just paper that you'll, write it with a pencil and throw away, it's got some nice chunky components here. The base gameplay is 1 to 4, but apparently you can play a bunch more with additional maps. And it looks like what you're doing is you've got a map of the US, but there's also different maps depending on which type of music genre you're in, whether it's rock or pop or whatever. And what you're trying to do is basically make this contiguous route that goes, I guess, in ascending order. So in other words, you want to be able to trace a route without having to double back too much. And the way that you're doing this is there's a shared roll of 2 D10s. And so like if I roll a 3 and a 4, I can either take that as a 34 or a 43. And then I'm also drawing cards that are giving me regions and then possibly states where I'm able to write these numbers. And so it's just kind of that advanced planning of, well, if I'm going to go over to this side of the map last, I don't want to put a low number over there. It looks interesting. It's $24 to get the base pledge. If you want to double that for $48, you can get 8 additional maps. I just went in with the base pledge myself. I don't know. What do you think? Did you take a look at this, Alex?
I took a quick look at it. It's not something I'm going to immediately back, but I like the look of it, and it's something I would definitely be interested in playing. It's just not something that I like roll and writes a good amount, and I don't want to spoil next week's review, but at least off of an initial play, I think there's some really interesting things being done with that, especially when you look at like a steamrollers. I like it when roll and writes don't have the multiplayer solitaire problem, or I consider it a problem, where you're all kind of doing the same thing off of the same die roll, and we'll see what happens at the end. It's part of why I didn't like Castles of Burgundy, the dice game, for instance. But this definitely looks like it has some potential. I like the theme, and the look of it's interesting. It's just not something I'm going to back personally, but I can understand why a lot of folks have jumped on board. It looks pretty cool.
So yeah, if you want to pick this up, back it, I suppose. You've got until June 13th.
It's right now it's done $46,000 out of its $20,000 funding goal, and the campaign ends June 13th. So you got a couple weeks after this episode comes out to hop on board and get on tour if you want to get on tour. Anyway, so that's cool. On tour, and that is our look at the news.
2018 is the 10th anniversary for Tasty Minstrel Games, and they're celebrating with a 10th anniversary extravaganza, which includes reprints, special editions, and a whole lot more. Earlier this month, they had the Homesteaders 10th anniversary edition on Kickstarter. They made the decision not to deluxify this game so that it could be available at retail, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. TMG is also hard at work putting together a new edition of the second game that launched the company, Terra Prime. Terra Prime will now be set in the very successful Eminent Domain universe as a prequel to Eminent Domain called Eminent Domain Origins. Keep an eye out for more details about this and what else they have on the horizon for their 10th anniversary extravaganza. You can learn more from the TMG podcast hosted by Lance the Undead Viking, and you can check out what else they have in store this year, along with information about all their other amazing titles over at playtmg.com. Arcane Wonders is pleased to announce the release of Senshi coming this May. In Senshi, you are a warrior monk studying diligently at the temple under the tutelage of the current master. You and your fellow students train vigorously every day to improve your mind and body, but your master is ailing, and only one Senshi will become the next master. To prove your worth, you must develop 4 attributes: strength, agility, wisdom, and honor. A true master must be strong in all of these, and weak in none. Senshi is designed by Dan Manfredi. It's a strategy game for 2 to 4 players that takes about 15 minutes to play. You'll carefully manipulate stacks of tiles that represent those 4 attributes: the strength, agility, wisdom, and honor. You'll compete in a battle of wits to become the next master of your temple. You can learn more about Senshi and Arcane Wonders, other amazing titles at arcanewonders.com. You know what, friends? Board game tables are an expensive proposition for sure. But nothing beats the experience of playing your favorite games in style on a high-quality playing surface. Now, thanks to our buddy Berkey and Game Toppers, you can turn your own kitchen or dining room table into a premium, portable game solution with all the features of a high-end gaming table, but, and this is important, at a fraction of the cost. I have played games on these Game Toppers before, and I have got to say that they are truly excellent. This is someone who has played on custom-built tables, on mass-produced gaming tables. I got to tell you, these Game Toppers are fantastic. They feature the best of both worlds, featuring beautiful premium wood and finishes, as well as lightweight aluminum to make the setup, breakdown, and transportation a breeze. Plus, you can use thematic gaming mats to match your play experience. So, if you're looking for an affordable solution to your board gaming table needs, look no further than Game Toppers, and you can check them out at GameToppersLLC.com.
Well, speaking of spiels, Kennerspiels, Orleans was nominated in 2015 and has since taken over as a bag builder that a lot of people will go to in their time of bag building needs. Well, there's a successor, a sequel, if you will, a game that seeks to take things to the land of alpacas. Does Altiplano succeed, or does it fall flat, fall far short of its predecessor? We'll tell you.
So Altiplano is a bag-building game where you are trying to acquire various resources that you'll put in your bag to be able to pull out to basically fulfill recipes on your action board to then get other stuff. You're going to be using some of these resources, sending them to fulfill contracts. You're going to be putting them in your warehouse. And ultimately, at the end of the game, whoever has scored the most points by some of the various bonuses in the warehouse, by completing contracts, possibly by building certain houses, and then also by just the sheer value of these resources is going to be the winner. So everyone starts off with their own player board that has several action spaces, and these action spaces correspond to certain regions, and these regions are in the middle of the table. There's the forest, there's the mountains, there's the village, and there are these little cutouts, and you'll shuffle them up and arrange them in a circle randomly each time. And so if I'm going to take one of the actions on my player board that's in the forest, during my turn, I'm going to have to make sure that my player pawn is in the forest. And so from time to time, I may have to move. You get to basically move once per turn for free, and then you could spend food to be able to move. So there's this restriction of you can't necessarily do everything you want to do in a turn. You have to make sure that you have the ability to move from one area in the rondel to another. So let's talk about the different resources. There's all different types. There is food, there's wood and fish and stone and ore and silver and rugs and wool and alpacas and all sorts of stuff. And you're using certain things to put on your board to turn into other things. And so when you place them on your board, you resolve the action. You then get some new item from the central area. You add that to your bag that you're able to then pull in the future. Now, I mentioned a couple things. You're able to get contracts from the market, and when you send the goods out to the contracts, those are worth points into the game. When you send things to your warehouse, you're going to get bonus at the end of the game for having filled certain rows of your warehouse. Additionally, you can purchase extensions when you're in the market area. And the extensions are new action spots that you're able to take that are usually either more efficient actions or they enable you to get things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get. Like, for example, fish. You have no access to fish on your main player board. And so you need an extension to get that. Or maybe you need to go to the fishing village and you can buy a boat, which costs 2 wood. And then that gives you access to some other item that you might not otherwise get. So lots of different things here. I don't think we need to get too in the weeds on how this game works. If you're familiar with Orleans, this game is going to be pretty familiar to you. Otherwise, it's just this concept of you're pulling things at random from a bag. You're then assigning them to different spots on your board in order to fulfill certain requirements, which give you certain actions. And you're just trying to create as efficient an engine as possible, while from time to time thinning out your bag, because there are certain things you don't want to see that are worth, say, high points, but don't really do anything for you. And so yeah, that's gonna basically be how you play the game. It's gonna end when one of the tiles, everything's been removed from them, or all of the extra action extension markers are gone. And that's pretty much it. That's how you play Altiplano. So Alex, what are your initial thoughts?
So Orleans, when it came over, was a game that I liked but didn't love. It was a game that you, Sean, were absolutely head over heels for, at least initially.
Loved it.
For me, it just started to feel, off of enough plays, kind of samey. It just felt like you were fairly limited in the different routes you could pursue, I guess. Or at least they were fairly standard. It didn't feel like the game had a ton of surprise. It felt like the game had some standard openings and you would develop and compete, but I wasn't enamored with the game. I liked it. I didn't love it. My initial play of Altiplano, my ears perked up a little bit because it feels a little more sandboxy than Orleans does because of the different locations. You have different starting tile setups which direct your strategy a bit, but even within that, it felt like there were different paths, different ways to get better, competing for different cards, and I had some enjoyment with it. And then on other plays, it sort of felt like it dragged a little bit. And so even in talking about this, until I talk through this thing a little more, I'm not 100% sure where I am. I think it may very well be a better designed game than Orleans in some ways, but I don't know if it's as fun of a game as Orleans is. And I think there are some reasons for that, which I'm going to get into. So I'm a little mixed on this one, Sean, a little mixed out of the gate. What about you?
So yeah, Orleans I think is a fantastic game. I played it for the first time at Dice Tower Con several years ago with Berkey. I think it was actually the first game Berkey and I played together. I sat down, I read the rules, and it would just kind of clicked. It was all clicking in my head. It's a fairly easy teach. And I just from reading the rules, I'm like, I think I'm really going to like this game. And it turns out I did. I think it would probably fall to a 5 now. It was a 6 when we reviewed it and when I first played it. But it's probably settled at a 5. I have several of the expansions from TMG, which I just really need to bust out at some point and play. And I don't know whether or not those would bring it back up to a 6 or not for me, but it's a very solid 5. I think it's fantastic. And so looking at Altiplano, I'm obviously intrigued. There's obviously a little more complexity here. And I think you're right. I hadn't really thought about it, but when you said it feels a little bit more sandboxy, I think you got it exactly there because there's more resources. In Orleans, you don't have resources, you have types of medieval workers, and there's maybe 9 or so, and there's probably, 15 different resources in Altiplano, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it maybe even more, but yeah, somewhere in that ballpark.
So I think, yeah, you're able to kind of forge your own path, do things differently. I've played 4 games of it now. I played it 2, 3, and 5. I was unable to get it a 4-player count. But in all of those games, they felt different, in part due to player count, but also what I was doing was really different. I wonder to what extent there's a similar consideration that I gave when we reviewed, when I reviewed Gaia Project. Because I said basically Gaia Project is, I think, a better designed game than Terra Mystica, and this created its own sort of issues on the guild.
Oh yeah, you really had it rough on that thread there, Sean. Really had it rough.
Yep. Yeah. No, people were just really rough on me in that thread. No, but basically, that Gaia project didn't do enough different in my mind, and there's a nostalgia factor that Terra Mystica had, and it just didn't live up to the expectations, I guess. And so there's a part of me that's wondering if that's the case here, and I'm not entirely sure. There are things that I really like about this game, but there's a certain elegance to Orleans that I don't think that you have here in Altiplano. There are things that I like that this adds. Like in Orleans, you're collecting these different goods, but you don't do anything with them. They're just worth variable points, depending on which good they are. Here, you're actually able to use your goods, send them off to the warehouse, send them off to contracts. Like, you'd think that the more complex game would kind of scratch the itch for me, for the types of games I like more. But I just wonder if Orleans is just a cleaner, more elegant game overall. Not to say I didn't enjoy my plays, but it just didn't do enough new for me that just was like, oh, wow, this game's amazing. I think it's good. I think it's really good, but probably just not great for me because of that. And I think you might be right. It might be a better design game than base Orleans. I don't know.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. Components and art, Sean.
Whoa. We're skipping rulebook?
Oh, rulebook. Whoops. Rulebook.
Because I got some things to say about this rulebook.
Let's hear this rulebook. Yeah. Give me the rulebook skinny.
This rulebook is rough. Certainly, for some of like the basics of the game, it makes sense. But like the explanations of what some of the extension tiles do, I was not pleased with. It was not clear. I would go to BGG to look things up, and there was tons of questions about, things that should have been pretty straightforward, pretty easy. I had played one of the extensions incredibly wrong. So Alex, there's this one extension that simply has one spot for one of your resource discs.
Yes.
Do you recall how that tile plays?
I believe it's that you can, when you're placing workers, put a worker there, or a good, however you're...
Your goods, yeah.
Yeah. To kind of keep there in the meantime, and then use as part of an action.
Okay. So that's correct. That's the correct way to play, Alex. The way that it's written in the rulebook, I don't know it's that clear. Because I read it and I reread it. We played several games of this where basically it was like you could just take the action of anything on your main board, not any of the extensions, by just spending a resource, essentially. And the rulebook wasn't perfectly described.
Okay. Wasn't clear enough.
And certainly, there were other people that had the same issue on BGG. But yeah, so I had some issues overall with the rulebook.
Got it. I did not learn this thing from the rulebook. I didn't touch the rulebook at any point. So I can't speak much to it in this situation. Jake did a good job teaching it, though. Good job, Jake.
Yay, Jake.
Hey, art and components.
I don't know if I've just been spoiled by TMG's deluxeified copies, because in Orleans, which of course we're going to keep comparing Altiplano to Orleans, but in the deluxeified version, you have these nice thick wooden discs that you have to put stickers on. Everything's just nice. You have player color bags for pulling the chits out of. Here you have these kind of cheap black bags. My copy, at least, did not punch particularly well.
Oh.
And I don't know if that was just my copy, but there was a lot of excess paper on a lot of the circular chits.
Not a problem we had with the copy that Jake and Danielle picked up, because I helped them punch it and it was fine.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe it was just my particular copy then that was an issue. I think it's a fine. Otherwise, I think it's a fine production. Nothing really kind of stood out to me.
Iconography, I think, is fairly clear in this, and I like the bright look of it. I think it looks better on the table than Orleans does. I kind of like that more slightly cartoony style. I will say it is a table hog in its own way in terms of the amount of space some of this stuff takes up. which isn't unexpected with the amount of stuff you have going on. But I mean, you have your own player board, which needs room for extensions to go around it, and then you have the warehouse, which is a pretty chunky board in and of itself, and then you have all of the different locations, piles for tokens. This thing is a bit of a bear as far as setup and breakdown, and takes up a ton of space. I think it's by necessity in a lot of ways, but yeah, worth knowing that that's there if that's something that tends to bug you. I will say this: I almost said it. I almost said llama, but I didn't. The Alpaca first player marker kept falling apart. We couldn't get that thing to stand up properly. I don't know why. Yeah,
it's a 3-part alpaca. Yeah, the 2 sets of legs and the body. Yeah, it kept falling apart. It was kind of annoying. I will say, is when your comment about art, you realize it's the same artist. Orleans, it's Clemens Franz.
Sure.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick which table presence I think was stronger, I think it'd be Orleans. But I think this has a pretty good table presence.
Yeah, I enjoyed the look of it, at least compared to Orleans, and I don't know, that sort of older European style, I'm not always as charmed by it as you are, I don't think. So
fair enough.
Yeah, in any case, I think it's fine. I don't have any significant complaints. I think it's a pretty decent production for what you're getting in this game and for what you need for this game. So yeah, I didn't have an issue with it. So gameplay innovation, and this is where the meat of everything is, as it always is, but especially here. So Sean, what did you like better about this than you liked in Orleans? Because you sort of seem to agree with the assessment that this might be a better designed game than Orleans.
Yeah, so I felt like you said, there were different ways to branch off and do different things. And you could certainly focus maybe on fulfilling contracts, or you could focus on the warehouse, or maybe do a little bit of both. But I think that ultimately the bag thinning aspect of this game was a little bit more interesting. So to compare yet again, in Orleans, one of the main ways you would thin your bag is by sending people to the public deeds board or public works board. And there's a little bit of interaction there because you're trying to send certain types of your workers up to certain spots to get certain bonuses. And then if you complete a certain area, you're going to get another bonus. And that was fine. Here, you're sending them either to contracts that you've acquired, which give you some pretty significant points, or you're sending them over to your warehouse. And there's an interesting warehouse management game. Basically, your warehouse has, I think, 10 different rows that you can fill up. And the first half, I think they're like 3 spaces, and the second half, they're like 5 spaces each. And basically, you have to, when you're filling in a row, it has to all be the same type of resource. Although there is a corn, which is a square. It's a square tile. It's not a circular tile because it's not something you're putting into your bag. It's something that goes immediately into your warehouse. And corn is basically a wild. And there's some restrictions on how you can place it, but it can help you fill in rows. And so I thought there was a pretty neat warehouse management aspect to the game, and that contract fulfillment, and the fact that there's value to the types of resources that you're acquiring. Whereas in Orleans, your workers themselves, the medieval workers, don't have any inherent value other than what they're able to do. So I liked that. There was a lot I liked about this game. Yeah, what do you think?
I mean, so you're right. There's some interest in multiple ways to get the same good. I might need to get this one good I'm bad at producing. The starting boards in this game, and I sort of briefly touched on this, you get a starting extension that gives you some starting resources that are going to be different from everyone else. And so you're incentivized in some ways to specialize or go down a certain path. But how you go down that path can be different. For instance, if I want to acquire a type of good I'm bad at producing, for instance, I might be great at digging up at rocks and making diamond bracelets or whatever those are. But I might be terrible at alpaca farming. I might not have a single one in my bag. Well, there's other ways to get that. There's the boat action, where if you spend 2 wood, you can get a resource of your choice effectively, assuming that card is still available in the stack. That's one way of doing it. You could try and eventually get an alpaca through other means or different conversion and get access to it that way. Or you could just ignore that and go in a completely different direction. The warehouse thinning and that balancing act of that, I was so bad at, Sean. I was not great at this game. There's a lot of stuff to balance. I did okay, especially in my second play of this. I was competitive, but man, I felt pretty lost at times with this one. And certainly there was some table frustration. Berkey was in that game too. It's easy to get frustrated with this one. It's easy, for instance, Berkey spent a good half the game trying to get a resource that he ultimately never got to fulfill a contract. He took a contract that he couldn't fulfill, and he was stuck with it basically the entire game. And that can happen to you in this. This is one that can be pretty penalizing for newer players, that if you don't know what's up or if you don't plan wisely, one bad decision on a contract can really hose you in this game. You can be really stuck with something. Or if you thin out stuff too much and you don't have the resources needed to get other resources, that could be a big problem too. So this game has a potential to be punishing, especially to folks who don't know what's up, and a potential to be rewarding for players who have a little more experience. I tend to side on wanting the other side of that to be less penalizing, to be less punishing, to be less tricky for a first-time player. I like it when folks can be competitive. Yes, it's nice when someone with more skill or who has more experience can dominate, but you want folks to feel like they at least have done something over the course of the game. And this one can definitely leave you scratching your head and feeling helpless in the wrong plays of this. So I didn't dig that part so much, but I did dig that there were multiple ways of doing things. I did dig that it had that kind of sandboxy open feel to it. And so I liked a lot of those elements. I will say this, to kind of get onto another topic point. At least at 4 players, this thing dragged on a little too long for my liking. There was definitely a point in the game where I was like, all right, this should probably be over by now. And it went on a good 3 or 4 rounds beyond that. So it felt a little long for what I would like off of that. I don't know if that's an experience you had at any of the player counts, Sean.
Yeah, so don't ever play this game at 5 players.
Oh, boy. Oh, I don't even know why you would consider it. Man.
Well, because it's a podcast and I'm trying to get all the play counts, Alex, to warn people against playing it at 5 players. So yeah, it was not great at 5. There was enough downtime. The other play counts were pretty quick affairs. And this was about 3.5 hours. And it was rough. Like, I mean, it was fine and it was enjoyable. And it's not really that there was any one person that had any significant AP issues. It's just, you know, a little bit of delay here or there in a 5-player game is really gonna add up. 3 players, I think, is probably the sweet spot. I enjoyed it pretty well at 2 as well. But yeah, just don't play with 5. Did you play it at 4 players?
Yeah, that was the roughest one. That was the roughest one as far as that, and I can't even imagine 5. Yeah, it's just there were enough moments for slowdown, that planning at the start of the turn. Once you get the turns going, they don't take a ton of time. But the actual planning and getting to that point can take some time.
The 2 knocks I have against the game, the player interaction and then the movement. So with the player interaction, in Orleans, you have the fact that you're kind of racing to drop off trading posts and collect certain types of goods. So there's some interaction there. There's racing, or not racing, but there's interaction of who's putting their workers up on the beneficial deeds, I think is what it's called, up on that board. And then there's also a much more restricted number of your medieval workers that you have access to. When you move up on these certain tracks in Orleans, there may come a point when you run out of a certain type of worker. And that can happen here, but there's a lot more of each individual resource in Altiplano. And so I felt like really the interaction was almost negligible. The only real interaction was who was going to be able to buy either a contract first or an extension first, or a house or a boat. And it's, well, kind of sounds like a lot of things, but ultimately I thought it was a low level interaction. What about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I mean, it's the race to a boat. It's the It's the race to a contract. And other than that, there isn't a ton there. There isn't, and the race to an extension. In certain cases, you might both have the eye on the same extension. It's not a ton. I didn't feel like I necessarily needed more until I saw comments from the guild of folks saying, this thing doesn't have enough interaction, it feels like solitaire. To me, I never got that feeling when I was playing it. I can see where people are coming from. It just wasn't a feeling I got actually playing it.
Yeah. And so then the other issue is the movement. And the movement at the same time feels too easy and too restrictive in my mind. Basically, you get a free movement each round. So you're able to move 1 to 3 spaces around this rondelle, for lack of a better word. And there are 6 different spaces. So your 1 to 3 movement going in either direction gets you wherever you want. And then if you have planned ahead and placed some food on another movement spot during your turn, you can spend that food in order to move to one adjacent space. So that's a little bit more restrictive. If you've acquired an additional wagon, which is what gives you that free move in the first place, you can have a second wagon, a third wagon, a fourth wagon. And so for second, third, and fourth wagons, whenever you spend food, now you're able to move again 1 to 3. And if you've done a good enough job of having enough food that you can have multiple moves in a turn, if you're pulling out enough chits from your bag, because at the start of the game, everyone only pulls out 4. And then there's a road building track that you move up. And as you move up that, you're going to be able to pull more out of your bag. So you have a lot of these considerations to make. And if you're efficient at that, then you can move a lot, because it could be that maybe I've filled up my entire player board, but I'm not going to be able to take every single action in a turn, even though I have paid to complete them. The movement was almost like, well, I don't know that I cared about it enough. I don't know that I cared about the extra complexity it added. And it just meant that I had to make sure I had enough food, but not so much that it's clogging up my bag, not letting me do other things.
It's a balancing act. There's a lot to consider with this game, for sure. I would say this. I didn't care about movement until I cared very much about movement.
Right.
There are situations where the boards are set out randomly. There's not a specific arrangement they're supposed to have. And sometimes that can prove really convenient, depending on your game plan, and sometimes that can really hose you. I took advantage of that a lot in certain player counts, and knowing the puzzle of that, knowing how to be efficient with turns, can actually be pretty satisfying. And there are times when you feel really restricted by it and hosed. And there are times when it doesn't feel like a factor at all, where it feels like I can just run over the board as far as I want. I've got plenty of food, no problem. I'm going to draw more. So I didn't have a problem with it. But there's a lot of things going on with it. There's no doubt about it.
And certainly there's interesting choices in this game. And there were times, like you said, you'd have a really efficient turn. I'd feel clever. I don't know. Well, is this a thematic game in your mind, Alex?
Sure. Yeah. Because corn can go in the warehouse and it doesn't spoil, but food will spoil if you put it in the warehouse. So don't put food in the warehouse, Sean.
Okay, I won't. Yeah, that's a restriction in the game. I think it's a pretty dry Euro in most respects. Not particularly thematic. So, well, let's see what the guild had to say. A lot of thoughts over here. Royce Calverley says, I enjoyed this one a lot. However, it suffers from comparison to the near perfect Orleans. It's a very different game from Orleans with a central movement mechanic that changes with every game. I don't know if it has the staying power of Orleans, as the setup does direct the strategy to some extent. It's a solid 4 out of 6.
For me, I would argue that it does dictate the strategy to a degree, but I think there's enough of those different starting tiles that those games can feel fairly unique. Certainly, we didn't choose ours in our game. We just dealt them out randomly, and what you got, you got. And I think there's some appeal, similar to Scythe, for instance, where some of the appeal of Scythe is, how can I make this faction's power work in a cool way to ultimately win the game? I think with Altiplano, it has that same kind of problem. So actually, to me, it strikes me as actually a strength and not a problem. And I don't know. I don't know if I'll play this one enough for it to become a problem. I can think is actually the correct answer there. So,
Okay.
Yeah. Weeding Han says, Altiplano is an okay game, but every time I play it, my thoughts are, I wish I was playing Orleans now. I guess the theme and additional mechanics just don't do it for me. I still own it now, but it's a 3 currently. So, yeah, and this is kind of the start of a little bit of an avalanche, I would say. A brief avalanche of thoughts from the guild here, Sean.
Yeah. So Chad Jacobson says, my group played this a few times in anticipation of getting a review out for it. But after 3 plays, we realized we're all very meh about this one. It is by no means a bad game, just not an exciting one. In theory, I like the idea of many different strategies to win, with a multiplayer solitaire feel, which doesn't usually bother me as much as others. But really, there doesn't often seem to be much tension there either. Sure, you can take resources others need, but players can see it coming and plan a bit. 2 things Altiplano does right here are the ability to pull back to your planning spots at the beginning of a round, and the mechanism of the container you fill up emptying all your chits back in the bag. This is more like a deck builder, and it ensures you aren't stuck with only drawing out some of the same stupid chits over and over as in Orleans. But we love Orleans, and with the trade expansion, there just isn't any reason for us to play Altiplano. Sadly, it's a vanilla 3. All right, so a couple takeaways for me from there. Number 1, I agree. The fact that there's more of a cycling of the things that you're acquiring, because basically he's referring to in Orleans, when you spend a good or spend the workers, they go back into your bag so that the new stuff you're acquiring, you may never pull out. You may never pull out a certain tile, whereas the way that things go from your bag to your board to this container to your bag, everything's getting cycled through. So I do really like that. And yeah, I've got the trade expansion for Orleans. Maybe that's what I need to really spice it up. So I think Chad and I might be of a similar mindset here.
Richie Turner says, the biggest issue with Altiplano is that Orleans exists. After every game of Altiplano, I was left wishing we had played Orleans instead. Overall, I would give it a 3. It felt repetitive quickly, and there's almost 0 interaction. Just go play Orleans with the Trade and Intrigue expansion. I have not played with any of the Orleans expansions. I would be curious to try it with them at some point. But yeah, so that was the negative. But hey, there was one positive, right?
Yeah, so Ryan Post said, I guess I'm in the minority, but I think Altiplano is a big improvement over Orleans. It takes out what I don't like in Orleans, a bad scoring system, random draw, and events, and adds more strategy, movement, checking tiles and bag and knowing what you get. Most underrated aspect is that some goods are not obtainable by actions on your board, so it creates very different game states for players. That plus the missions really improve on Orleans' lack of variability. Having not played Orleans expansions because I didn't like the base game enough to try them, I'd say it took a 3 and made it into a 5. Well, Alex, that's what the guild has to say. What do you have to say? What say you?
Oh, I'm going first?
Yes, you're going first.
Bummer. Okay, so we here at the Dukes of Dice review things on a 6-point scale. 1 being terrible, very bad, so bad, super bad. 6 being, oh my goodness, amazing. I have to play this all the time, every time. AKA the Mind first mention. Okay. Having played this on a couple of plays, I feel like I needed to play this thing more before giving full thoughts, but I was unable to. Oh well, it happens. Here's what I would say. I think this is probably a better designed game than Orleans and less of a fun game. Orleans I enjoyed for a few plays, and then it got a little bit boring, and I probably needed to try it with an expansion. Altiplano, I felt like there was enough depth there that I didn't know what I was doing, and I felt like I needed enough more new plays to actually get decent enough at the game to feel like I was competent. Given that, it feels like there's more meat on this bone. Also, though, I don't think it was as fun on initial plays as Orleans. I don't remember what I gave Orleans. It was a 4 or a 5. If it was a 4, it was a high 4. If it was a 5, it was a low 5. And it's probably still in that range now. For me, Altiplano will fall right about at a low 4. A good game worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy. And the main reason for that is because I'm intrigued. I want to get better at this. I want to improve. I want to try this out. I want to play in this sandbox a little more and improve. Not so much that I'm going to go out immediately and play this a whole bunch more times, but enough where I'd like access to this and like the chance to dive back in and try and get better with this. So for that reason, because that's stuck with me in that way, it's enough to keep it at a 4. Not very high on the 4 scale, close to a 3, just because of play length and just turns feeling too long. But there's enough here where I actually, oddly enough, feel like I want to get better and want to give this thing another try and play more. And because of that, that's enough to keep it at a 4 for me. A good game, worth playing, just not all the time, but belongs in the Duchy.
So, spoiler alert, Alex, you're not going to play this anymore.
Oh, really?
You know what I'm going to do this Wednesday, because I've actually gotten most of the plays I need in for our next review game. I do want to get a couple more in. I enjoy it. Anyway, let's talk about this game. Actually, let's not talk about this game. Let's talk about Orleans. Next Wednesday, I'm going to take Orleans, my nice TMG Deluxeified copy. I'm going to open up and punch the Trade and Intrigue expansion, and I'm curious to play that. I bet you I'm going to be like, yeah, this is where it's at. So yeah, Altiplano, I'm going to give this a 3. There's a part of me that wants to lean towards a 4, and I'm just thinking, yeah, it's just going to wind up at a 3 when we do the double take. So let's just skip to the chase. Skip the chase. Skip to the chase.
Okay.
You skip to the chase. Is that right? Is that
jump to the chase? Cut to the chase? Cut to the chase. Cut to the chase. That took way longer than it should have.
Wow. Anyway, I kind of talk for a living, and so do you.
No, I don't. Not anymore.
That's true. So
got out of that game.
A 3. Game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. I think I'm going to get rid of my copy. I think I'd rather just play Orleans. It's a simpler game, which isn't necessarily something that I would prefer, but there's a certain elegance to it. Yeah, Altiplano's fun. I won't turn down a play in that right situation, but not particularly crazy about it. So yeah, that's going to do it for the Duke's review of Altiplano from Renegade Games. A 4, albeit a low 4 from Alex, and a 3 from Sean.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
This week's Dukes Double Take, we're looking back at Yokohama. Full disclosure from our sponsor, Tasty Minstrel Games, who Sean also gave a few shout-outs to during the review. This was episode 144, Call Me Meiji. Sean, you gave this one a 5. You said you flirted with a 6 with this one. The game itself looks overwhelming, isn't a rough teach. You like this one a ton. I also gave this one a 5. I said that grew on me the more and more I played it. A brutal setup, but not too terrible as a teach, and it checked a lot of boxes for me. The kind of planning that was in this game was something I really, really enjoyed. Sean, have you played this game since?
Yeah, I have. I've played it just the one time since, and it's still a fantastic game. So this is a spatial action selection game where you have a variable setup for the board, these different tiles, and you're moving this pawn of yours around to take different actions, and there's some restrictions. You're getting resources, turning them into other stuff, filling contracts, yada, yada, yada. It's a Euro game, and I think it's fantastic. I'm going to keep this at a 5. Great game, will rarely turn down a play of it. I think it's really fantastic. High five. High five.
High five! We said that a lot during, by the way, the review of this. I tried to high five you, and you shut me down. It was pretty brutal.
Oh, good.
I wasn't a fan of it.
Take that.
Anyway, I guess. So for me, I did play it since the review, and I know I played it since the review because I listened to it in preparation for this episode. I was planning a play of this specifically immediately afterwards, and I think I probably taught someone else. I think I played this at least twice since we reviewed this, and it's still right where it is. I haven't played it recently, but I see no reason to knock it down any lower than a 5 where it's been sitting. I think it's a great game. And I'd be intrigued to break this one out and play it again and see if it actually does still hold up. But at least in my mind, in the space it occupies in my head, it's staying pretty strong. It's pretty rare to play something after a review for us, especially when we were weekly. And this one was still able to do it. So a 5, a great game. We'll really turn on and play of it. I'm gonna keep it right there.
So the guild had some thoughts on this one. Evan says, I've played it 3 times and will play it again if asked, as it is a fun experience. But give me Istanbul, which gives me the same general feeling in half the playtime, a 3 on the Ducal scale. And yeah, I think Istanbul's a fine game, but for me, I'd rather play Yokohama over Istanbul. Although maybe I need to try Istanbul with the expansions.
And having not tried Istanbul with the expansion, I would agree with you. I like Yokohama better than Istanbul. Istanbul, one of the first games I bought pretty early on in my game buying life.
Well, it's the first game we reviewed.
That's true.
Yeah.
Scale question, Sean, that occurred to me as I'm thinking about this, because this has come up a few times recently. Gaia Project versus Terra Mystica, Altiplano versus Orleans, Yokohama versus Istanbul. Is there some way we need to modify the scale or adjust the scale or accommodate for when a game is simply replaced by another game? Because it seems like, based on how Evan's describing it, we've described games this way too. A game that replaces another game will immediately knock it down to a 3, even if the quality of the game might be better than that. Does that make sense? Or do we have to keep having this in context? Because my guess is if Orleans didn't exist, the score for Altiplano is going to be higher, right? It's going to be a 4 or a 5 from you. Am I mistaken?
It might be a 4.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah,
I think it's definitely a 4 if Orleans doesn't exist.
Everything exists in context, right? It's about the willingness to play a game. If Orleans didn't exist, I might be more willing to play Altiplano. If Yokohama didn't exist, I might be more willing to play Istanbul. I think that's only fair.
What about, just a thought as a term, a pure quality score? So you give the game an overall score based on your willingness to keep it in a collection or play, but you give it a pure quality score on how good the game is, in case someone hasn't played the other one, hasn't played, say, Orleans, or, I don't know.
No.
No? Well, I'm going to do it, and you can't stop me.
I can. I can just edit it out.
Oh, man. Didn't think about that one.
Take that.
Well, I'm going to still do it, and maybe I'll do it enough times that you'll forget 1 or 2 times.
Nope. I'll put a little post-it on my editing computer screen.
Okay. Well, sweet. Nice.
Anyway, Daniel Newman says, Yokohama is a 6 for me. Fantastic game. Was briefly in my top 10. Just barely got edged out recently, but I'd never turn down a play.
Weeding Han says, Yokohama is excellent. The deluxe version from TMG, fine sponsor of the Dukes of Dice, surely helps with the joy in playing the game, but the additional layers of mechanics, such as planning ahead with your drones, that's what I call them, before the boss travels around, gives it a clear edge over something similar to mechanics like Istanbul. A Ducal 5 for me.
And then Chad Jacobson says, surprisingly, I went back and checked my top 100 that I made 2 months ago, and Yokohama is at number 9. By Duke's rationale, that makes it a 6. What can I say? I do love the game. Plenty of different strategies to follow and more variability than most games makes this one sit atop many others. It's also a game that plays wonderfully well, though differently, at all player counts. And yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it scales, speaking of scale, different type of scale here, but it scales very well at different player counts, and it has a different feel. And I kind of like it when games feel differently at the different player counts.
Yeah. Jimmy DM90 says he just traded for the deluxe edition, played it a few times. The gap between how complicated it looks and how simple it plays is pretty massive. I enjoy it so far, though I was hoping the variable setup, the way the area tiles come out, would make each game feel more different, but that hasn't borne out. At least not a 2-player. Still happy to have it. So there you go.
And so, yeah, I was actually pretty concerned when we first reviewed this, Alex, because I knew that just you looking at it on the table was going to be overwhelming.
It's an overwhelming looking game. Yep.
But I'm glad that you gave it a chance.
It happens sometimes.
So maybe we do need to have you review Feudum after all.
Nope, not happening.
All right, well, that's going to do it for the Dukes Double Take of Yokohama. Staying at a 5 from each of us.
All right, finally this episode, our discussion topic. And this one was inspired by The Mind by Wolfgang Warsch. That's my new thing, Sean. Kind of like Rollin' America. The Mind is going to be The Mind by Wolfgang Warsch. Anyway. So this concept of print and play versus pay came up in the context of I, after having played this at Geekway, desperately wanted to get this, but don't have the patience of shipping through something like Amazon.de. I haven't ordered from there before. So what I did was, in order to play this with Abby the Monday after Geekway, I went and bought from Miniature Market a copy of the game and printed off a modification kit that's on BGG for this. First time I've ever done this. Use some other prototype parts from Monochromatic Wolf. There you go, you have a game. And the truth of the matter is, you don't need a ton to play the Mind. You need a few markers to keep track of shurikens. You need to know when you go up a life or at certain levels. And you need a deck of cards from 1 to 100. That's pretty much it. And this concept also came up with something like Fake Artist Goes to New York, which basically, if you have some sheets of paper or little whiteboards or whatever else, it's not that hard to make your own copy of this game. You can make your own version of A Fake Artist Goes to New York pretty easily. Now, it won't come in that awesome Oink Games tuck box, but what are you going to do? And so it struck me, at what point, Sean, do you go in and create your own version of a game? Where's the line there? How close to a deck of cards or something that's a common component does a game need to be before you just make it yourself and don't bother to buy it? And is that the right thing to do in that situation? So that's the discussion topic. Now discuss.
Yeah, so I think it kind of depends. Well, it depends on a lot of things, right? So, for example, our buddy Eugene, he did the same thing you did with the Mind. He used 6 Nimmt, which also has 1 to 100. And that's how I played the Mind. I didn't play the actual copy, but it's not available here in the US. So there's that. I've made other versions of Love Letter. Like I had a Star Wars Love Letter that I made, but that was just cause I just felt like doing it. Vader was the king and Leia was the princess and Luke was the prince and Yoda was the priest, I think. Anyway, there was a different reason behind that, obviously. I think that's probably a different discussion when you're modifying a game or retheming it or whatever. I did do my own copy of Diplomacy, Alex. Have you seen my Diplomacy copy?
I don't think so.
No? So it's 2 of these big whiteboards, and I printed up these giant maps of the Diplomacy maps, and then I made all of these magnetic pieces so that we could actually have it like up on a wall, and just the pieces would stick magnetically to the whiteboard. And it was super cool because I've owned 3 copies of Diplomacy in my life. And each edition has been slightly different. The most recent edition is terrible. The map is tiny. The pieces don't fit well. It's a horrible, horrible production. So I said, I'm going to make this giant map of Diplomacy and make the magnetic components. And so yeah, it was kind of like, well, I'm just not happy with what's out there now. And this was a game that we were playing enough for a while that I was like, yeah, this totally makes sense to me. So I've done that. I've even gone as far, Alex, to make magic cards. And I'm not talking about just like a proxy here or there, but one time in high school, I was at a football camp and there was a couple of us. This was actually the Air Force Academy football camp. We wanted to play Magic because I found out, oh, you play Magic too? And we didn't have any decks. So I went to the student store and I bought markers and a bunch of index cards. And I made out 120 Magic cards and we played Magic that way.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So apparently I will go to various lengths to improve games or play games or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I think probably now I don't know. I mean, I've got enough games that I don't know. I can wait till something comes over, or I might pay a little extra to have it shipped over. I don't know. But I mean, this is obviously for you something that you haven't really done before. Does it have to be this amazing 6 game for you to even consider it? I mean, I'm assuming, right?
I mean, I'll put it this way. A similar level of desperation existed with Mysterium, where, if you'll recall, at that Dice Tower Con, my first ever Dice Tower Con, after having tried it once or twice, and I don't remember if this was post-review or pre-review, I had to have it, and ultimately bought a copy from Jason Levine that was missing several cards, which I still have not gotten replaced for my Polish edition of Mysterium, but I wanted it that much. I have 2 copies of Mysterium. I have the US version, and I have the Polish version. And that's how desperate I was to get my hands on this game. So it happens sometimes, more often in the context of cons than not. A game I've tried at a con that doesn't have as good of availability in the US, and I will find some means or some way of getting that game. So yeah. I don't know. It definitely takes a game I like a lot for me to go to that level. I have not gone to the level of making a game, but the fact that I could modify another game to create this game raised an interesting thing to me, which is, how do you honor the design, the effort that goes into it, coming up with it, developing it, honing it? How do you honor that idea, but also not feel like you're paying for something that you could easily get for much cheaper by making yourself? That's the dilemma at the core of this for me, that I think is a tricky one. And as a part of Big Cardboard, I may have a different opinion of this than I used to. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, so I think for the most part, everything that I've done is a game that I've previously owned or that I'd owned. So I felt like I had license to kind of do that. I don't know. What do you think now of these 2 different mindsets?
Of the mindsets of, it's sort of the piracy one, right? It's, I bought this CD, so I'm okay downloading the MP3s for it. I don't know if I feel like it's quite game piracy. I mean, it sort of feels like mechanics piracy, I guess. Certainly we've seen controversy with folks stealing game concepts and republishing them, but as an individual player, if your game can be played with a deck of cards and some coins, is it theft if you're playing the game without buying the game that sells you basically that? I don't inherently think so. It doesn't strike me as piracy right off the bat. So I get why that line might be drawn there, but for me, that doesn't, I don't know about that so much. Do you think it would be stealing in that situation, Sean? For instance, am I stealing by creating my own bootleg copy of The Mind right now? And I say bootleg because it's, I guess, kind of a bootleg copy, right? It's the game with a printout. Is that stealing?
Well, I don't know. Let's say that you decide to create a cover of your favorite song and you play the guitar, because neither of us can play the guitar.
No.
And you sing and you create a recording, and then that's yours to listen to. I don't think that's necessarily analogous, but I don't know. I don't know. And like I said, in certain situations where, what if it's just not available to you? Or it's available, I mean, I guess in theory, anything's available if you want to pay the right price. Should you have to pay $200 to get, some game that's been marked up that then you have to pay international shipping for? I don't know. But I certainly understand. I feel like we've had a similar discussion topic before. If I just want to go out and just bootleg Altiplano, I could do that.
Yeah.
But I'm probably going to spend a lot more time and money than it would cost to just
buy a copy.
Buy it.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the whole point of this, is there are some games that are fairly simple and
right.
And you can do with a standard deck of playing cards or with some modification. So, I don't know. Guild had some amount to say about this, though, Sean. Your mama said, I have not bought Liar's Dice or Strike, but I play both with cups, boxes, and dice I already have. Of course, when I started doing this, Strike was out of print. But to be honest, I'm not sure I will buy either game since I only play each of those games once a year or so. Maybe after the show, I may be convinced to purchase the games because I'm the type of person who likes to give support and credit where credit is due. I think that's one of those games that you can absolutely make yourself. No problem at all. Pretty easy to do. Is that stealing? Are you a bad board gamer for doing it? No, I don't think so. I'm going to side on I don't think so. Even though fundamentally, I don't know. If Monochromatic Wolf ever has a game like that, then I will completely flip my opinion on this issue very quickly. But for the moment, we don't. I don't think so. Any case,
I do have a bootleg Harvest Dice that I created.
What?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. Wait, I'm not familiar with that game. Are you referring to farming vegetable rollers. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with an alternative name. Didn't
Good
work.
job.
Anyway.
Way to go. So Scott Briance has a couple games that he's recreated, which he doesn't feel particularly guilty about. Skull and Roses. I've introduced this to my family in a pub using beer mats. I did eventually buy this as the production version is very pretty, though my partner keeps threatening to use my copy as beer mats. And then he also mentioned Lost Cities, which basically can be played with a pack of playing cards, except that instead of having 5 suits, you only have 4. So those are options.
Yeah. The Mr. Sean says, if it's a game that can be played with a deck of cards or copy of the game, in the case of the Mind, whoa, shots fired. I don't agree with that, by the way. Then I would be buying a redundant copy of something to take up room on my shelves, drawers, available floor space. Granted, I'd be paying for the time and effort it took to devise the game, but that doesn't change the fact that I don't need more components to play the game, yet would be paying for them. Likely, that would be where I draw the line. If I had to make or harvest components from another game, I'm buying the game. Interesting distinction there. So basically, if it's something I can make from stuff I already have, then I'm not going to bother getting this other thing. So, yeah, I kind of get that mindset. Effectively, you can do that with the Mind using the game. I would say, by the way, they have very different feels, at least in my book. But I don't know. I've heard that comparison made before, too.
So Jonas Resting Jepson says, I will almost always buy a game that I could do as a do-it-yourself, especially if the package is made right. So, for instance, I do have Fake Artist. The small package and clever use of different colored pens makes it super easy to bring to the bar or lunch table. In fact, I fail to think of an example where I won't buy a produced copy.
Jonas, also a member of Big Cardboard, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, this is exactly the situation I've been in. I own a copy of the beautifully produced version of Fake Artist Goes to New York by Oink. Perfect for traveling, but there have been times when I've forgotten to bring it. With some markers and paper, it was easily recreated. But I still love owning it for the efficiency and the beauty. I like supporting the artist, so the line for me in where I would just DIY it without buying a copy is pretty far away. It would have to be something I just can't reasonably acquire. So that's interesting. His line is more, I can't reasonably get this, so I'm going to make a version of it myself. And I think my line for this starts to get blurred in. It's something that's so easy to acquire, so easy to make myself, that I don't feel the need to buy it. Or it's going to take, I'm going to have some hesitancy there. So, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I've shifted a bit on this. I think previously I would say, yeah, just go ahead and make that stuff. But I don't know. Having seen behind the scenes, I have a slightly different opinion, but a biased one, admittedly. So,
Fair enough.
that's our discussion topic. Let's talk about the rest of the top 6 names, Sean.
Let's do it. So Royce Calverley suggested Japandian, which is just a portmanteau of Japan and Andean, because we talked about Yokohama, and Altiplano takes place, it's the high plains in the Andes.
Yep. Jonathan Dodd suggested Emperor's New Groove, referencing Emperor Meiji and referencing The Emperor's New Groove, which features, I think, a llama in that movie, not an alpaca.
I'm going to leave the next one for you to do, Alex, because I know you're going to want to, so I'll skip it.
Woo!
So Steve O'Rourke, the name father, suggested Inferior Leon, which I think looks better than it sounds. Like Inferior and Orlean, smash them together, Inferior, I don't know. I'm not sure how to say it, Alex.
Fair
On
enough.
paper, it looks good.
Yep, but it's hard to say. Ryan Post with Duck Me Llama Grayish. Duck Me Llama Grayish. Llama Grayish, Llama Grayish. Llama Grayish, Llama Grayish, Llama Grayish. Oh, Llama Grayish. You better duck me, Llama Grayish. Anyway, that's his name. It was a good one.
Yes, to the tune of Rock Me Amadeus.
If you can get me a name that I can sing to, which some people did, but they were way longer this week, it's a good thing. I like doing that. Anyway.
So Scott Briand suggested Samurai Alpaca. Kind of like Samurai Jack, but unfortunately Alpaca has that A at the end, which makes it sound not as good. So yeah, Samurai Alpaca.
Yeah, there we go.
So good job, Guild.
Yeah, good job, Guild. And thanks to Jake Bach with the very clever and inside joke-ish Alpaca Ex Machina.
Yes, indeed.
I stole it from you, Sean. Take that.
Thanks. I know. I'm just like, why are you doing this to me? But that's okay, because you know what? It is Han Solo Thursday. So we have 10:15 tickets because I'm not tired enough. I'm going to go see some Han Solo, Alex. I'm going to see my favorite character in all of Star Wars. Who's my favorite character, Alex?
Han Solo?
No, get out of here.
Lando Calrissian?
Wow. Okay.
Darth Vader.
Wow. Second favorite, but go on. Keep trying. Let's just name them all.
No, gotta name them all.
Seriously, you don't know who my favorite character in all of Star Wars is.
Admiral Akbar.
Oh, boy. Okay, come on. Think about it. It makes perfect sense when you really think about it.
C-3PO.
Wow. Yes, that's everyone's favorite character. Is
Jar
3PO.
Jar Binks.
Yep. Nailed it. Can you really not figure this out?
Well, I thought Han Solo was.
No.
Chewbacca? Oh, Chewbacca. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I feel so bad. I'm sorry, Chewie. My bad, Chewie. Oh, no.
She gets so mad, by the way, when we tell her, Chewie comes from Chewbacca. She's like, no, it doesn't. I'm like, well, it does.
What does she think it comes from?
I don't know.
Chewie bars?
Sometimes we call her like a Wookiee, and she's accepted that she's part Wookiee.
Okay, nice. Does she respond? Does she know her actual name is Eliza?
Yeah, she knows her name is Eliza. We use Eliza like 10 to 15% of the time, but she knows. But she prefers to be called Chewie. And then when she's like 7, she's just gonna hate me.
Yeah, probably.
So that's coming. Anyway, I'm excited for Han Solo. So let's wrap this up, shall we?
Sure.
Well, that does it for episode 176, which I won't name again because Alex stole my thunder. You thunder thief, you.
I love my thunder. Just give it to me. Give me more thunder.
Until next time, this is Sean.
And also Alex.
Duke you later, everybody. Duke you later.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on May 24th, 2018. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, and Game Toppers, LLC. You can check out TMG's titles at PlayTMG.com, Arcane Wonders over at ArcaneWonders.com, and Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!